This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
Hey, this is Brian Peña. I always join the Vito podcast, the best podcast in the United States.
And welcome to the latest, the freshest edition of Tigers Talk with Chirco and Company. I am your host, Vito Geronimo Chirco, along to my usual sidekick and partner in crime, that is the Doc from Doc and Jock, John Charles Macaroon. John, how's it going?
No off season for this podcast, Vito. We're not taking any breaks. No one's going on vacation. I always enjoy when you come into the studio, get a chance to record talking baseball. You're the baseball guy, sir, so I always enjoy the time when we get a chance to record a podcast. And first and foremost, good to see you, brother. How are you doing?
Good to see you, too. And just really quick to follow up on what you just said, I don't get any vacation time here. Is that what
Absolutely
the case is?
not. The reason why this podcast network has done great things is that everybody knows on Wednesday there will be some baseball talk. Mostly the quality will be brought by me.
Correct. Oh, yeah. I know. Oh, yeah. Let me bow down to you.
And you'll add the color because I think everyone now has known that I'm the play-by-play guy. I'm the MVP. You're the color analyst kind of guy. You're the guy that just kind of chimes in with the good points here and there, and you let me lead, which is the recipe for success for this network.
Which actually is true with this podcast. As much as I laughed and made that little comment to you, I think it is pretty true. You're the play-by-play guy here, leading the conversation, directing the conversation, and play-by-play man, John Charles Macaroon. What do we have on the docket for this week's episode?
Lots to get to, obviously, regarding the offseason. I know that people regarding the Tigers are a little bit down. They know what's coming. The next couple seasons obviously are going to be tough. But we want to look at some players that have to rebound in 2018. One being Miguel Cabrera. We have to kind of talk about what do we expect from him? What is realistic? What should we as Tigers fans look to from the man making a boatload of money in the upcoming season? Because now it's been revealed that he's had some issues maybe off the field. He's had injuries. The last couple seasons, we haven't seen Miguel Cabrera. So we got to talk about realistically what we should expect in 2018, especially with a young team, because losing's going to wear on people. I mean, we all think, yeah, they're going to lose 97 games to 100 games, but how does this team respond? How do the veterans, Ian Kinsler, Victor Martinez, Miguel Cabrera, the ones that have been left behind, how do they respond to what's going on with the turnover on the roster? But first, I definitely want to talk to you about something that came across the news that I thought was hilarious and probably was a good indication of how bad the 2017 season was. Was it weird that Justin Upton won Tiger of the Year when he was traded with a month left in the season? I thought that was very weird that they voted and Upton got 15 of 26 first-place votes. Nick Castellanos was second with 7 first-place votes.
Yeah, kind of odd, right? When a former Tiger does win the Tiger of the Year, but you could argue that he was the best slugger on the Tigers roster from day one when he was a member of the Tigers, in uniform actually with the Tigers. So kind of surprising though, right? A guy that did not play the full season with the Tigers wins the award. But does that describe or does that indicate how craptastic the Tigers 2017 campaign was? That a guy that did not even finish with your own organization wins the Tiger of the Year award? Like, how embarrassing is that for the rest of the Tigers roster that none of those guys that played from day one to game 162 with the Tigers organization could win the Tiger of the Year award?
He was voted Tiger of the Year by the Detroit chapter of the Baseball Writers Association of America. I feel like if you don't finish the season with the team that you're on, I don't think you should be qualified to win Tiger of the Year. I mean, it just seems odd that a current Angel is the Tiger of the Year in 2017.
Very surprising. And he just, remember, got that contract extension. 5 years, $105 million in totality. A lot of money. $20 million plus per season. And he's getting rich, huh? I hear he was rich, but a good deal for him. He's being paid handsomely by an Angels club that could use more than Justin Upton moving forward. And obviously, the Tigers had to move on from him when they did. There was no chance of a reunion this offseason, and he probably will never be a Tiger once again. But I think he deserved almost. I mean, don't you think based on his stats with the Tigers this year that you could argue in his WAR and that important stat that he deserved to win the Tiger of the Year? Couldn't you argue that, Doc?
If he was a Tiger,
So you have a problem with the fact that he didn't end with the Tigers?
I think that should be a qualification. It makes no sense. I mean, yeah, he had a decent season with the Tigers, but eventually he was traded off. So that means he's no longer a Tiger, and I don't feel like he should be eligible. Actually, the last three recipients of the award, J.D. Martinez in 2015, Justin Verlander in 2016, and now Upton in 2017, all gone. None of them are with the Detroit Tigers at this time.
We are so deprived now as a fan base. The Tigers organization is so deprived now. And where do you turn to for immediate success? Who is that player to turn to? Right, Doc? That is a question now facing all of us as Tigers fans, and the Tigers as an organization, obviously.
Well, this offseason, you and I are going to have some big challenges in terms of what we're going to talk about. Obviously, we'll talk about some of the prospects. We'll talk about how this rebuilding maybe could go. We'll play amateur GM. We'll have fun. We'll definitely do great interviews. But something that obviously people are wondering and people have debated is a big name free agent. All right, J.D. Martinez. This guy's on the market, and people are debating, across the interwebs, ESPN, Fox Sports, Detroit Sports Podcast Network. Everybody's kind of wondering, how much is the guy worth? Because he went out, and when you see the name in terms of who he went to represent him, he didn't go to some run-of-the-mill, lawyer cheap. No.
No, baby.
He went to the heavy hitter, Scott Boras. So when he gets signed, wherever he may land, do you think he's in that $25 to $30 million range? Do you think a team opens up the checkbook for J.D. Martinez?
I'm going to say yes, even though I think it should not be the case, because it takes only one team to like you so much that they give you a $25 million a year contract. That would be something crazy, but it's not unheard of. Even in the current economic climate of Major League Baseball, you could see a team outlandishly, lavishly spending big money, $25 million a year at least, to attain the services of J.D. Martinez. And especially now because of the fact that, as you noted already, the big man, Scott Boras, is his new agent.
Any talks, any rumors, whispers where he may end up? What's the best fit for a guy with the talents of J.D. Martinez?
Well, supposedly you have the Giants, who could use some outfield offense, are looking at him, and they're willing to spend big money this offseason, willing to make a big deal to land a big name player such as J.D. Martinez. The Cardinals, who might have some young pieces that they can build around, and adding J.D. Martinez to that club to add that big bat to the middle of their order, might be able to catapult them atop the Cubs, or at least into a wild card playoff spot next year. So I think those two franchises right there. But I think, honestly, Doc, he is perfect for an American League ball club. And how about his former ball club? Not the Detroit Tigers. Don't get yourself started with that and jump to conclusions there, because I'm not talking about the Tigers here. I'm saying the other former club that he played for in the Houston Astros. How about the Astros landing him this offseason? Might be willing to spend some money, too. They already spent big money on Justin Verlander. Have to pay him all that money, $20 million annually the next 2 years. But the thing is, how about just add to that payroll if you want to win again, to enhance your odds of winning again? You add J.D. Martinez, a big bat, who can be your DH. Carlos Beltran, remember, just retired. And he was at DH at times this past season for the Houston Astros.
Ooh.
How about J.D. Martinez going there, back to Houston, to be their everyday designated hitter, Doc?
It would be a huge love fest over there in Houston. Jose Altuve would love Justin Verlander. He'd also love J.D. Martinez.
Oh, yeah.
That story would then come full circle, where a guy that was let go by an organization went on to have success, got his swing retooled, then goes back to Houston, just dingers, hits a bunch of home runs, and maybe hits a key home run maybe to get them back-to-back. I mean, Houston's got a good team, and they added Justin Verlander. McCullers, Keuchel, and Verlander are just going to probably get better in the upcoming seasons. Verlander and what he brings to the table, if he can maintain the level, if he can amp it up again, all signs point to Houston being a great baseball destination. But it is hard to repeat. But J.D. Martinez on the Astros, my goodness, oh my.
That's a way of enhancing your odds of repeating as World Series champs. Houston's never done it, and they can win back-to-back without J.D. Martinez. By adding him, his big bat, to the middle of that order, Jose Altuve and the Astros organization and fan base will be loving Julio Daniel Martinez if he does get added. Thing is, are they going to spend the money? Right? It always comes down to that, Doc. Will a team like the Astros, who aren't a big budget ball club, spend the money after getting Justin Verlander already and paying that $20 million a year the next 2 seasons? I mean, what do you think, and how much of a factor do you think that truly is for the Houston Astros at this point?
I know, right? It just makes what the Tigers did that much more frustrating, where they had a $200 million payroll the last few seasons, and what do we got to show for it? not really a whole lot of nothing. And Houston, they added the piece. They drafted high. They sucked for quite a period of time. I mean, wow. And now they could potentially add to that payroll, but I don't think so. I think they have a good core. I mean, they probably are going to stay within a relative budget, less than $100 million. But it's just, you're financially responsible. You have to be in baseball. You have to know your market. And what Detroit got into was, because of the fact that Mike Ilitch was a solid owner, his dream was to build a winner here in Detroit. And even though the team maybe lost money, he was willing to spend on free agents. Well, that's over now. Now his son took over, and he's looking at the books, and he's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. We are not spending $180 million to $200 million on this team. So it's unfortunate, but a team like Houston, they got their ring. So whatever they do is just gravy. And if they add JD, great for them.
They're playing with house money. Now, the unfortunate thing is you have to spend real money to get Julio Daniel Martinez. But really quick, regarding Justin Verlander, you said Lance McCullers, Dallas Keuchel can only get better. Well, McCullers, Keuchel, and Verlander maybe not to be the total contrarian to that viewpoint of yours, but specifically regarding Justin Verlander, he's going to be 35 next year. He's no spring chicken. Roy Halladay, the fallen great Roy Halladay, when he turned 35, he fell off a cliff. I mean, he was not the same at all. No longer relevant as even close to being an ace caliber starting arm. So just saying, remember that as well.
Did Halladay marry a supermodel? There's certain powers that might keep Justin Verlander young, virile.
Vibrant, right?
Vibrant.
Yes.
And I think that he takes care of his body very well. I was wrong on Justin Verlander. I think I had said that. With the Tigers, I was right. I felt like he was only going to peak at 13, 14 wins, and I felt like paying him that much money on the Tigers would probably be a waste. But if he can replicate, look what he did in the postseason. Didn't lose a game until the World Series. He went to Houston. I feel like he gave it his all. Now, is he going to go out there and be a 20-game winner for the Astros? Probably not, but already worth it. The Tigers are sending him money. They don't even have to pay, the entire
everything,
contract. They don't have to pay it all. They get some money. So, in the end, what a story, huh? With Justin Verlander. 2 seconds left. Had to think about it. He had to weigh his options. Gets to go to the Houston Astros and win a World Series. What a story. But I really wish he would have won Game 6. I think that would have put a bow on that storied career and what he did. But look, without him, they don't even make it to the World Series. So he had great series in the ALDS and then the ALCS. Dude was balling. And when he got there, that was the missing piece. He was the guy. But now talking about the Tigers, when you read the free press, you read the news, you read Baseball America, you start looking at kind of how a team gets deconstructed. And you look at how important a quality general manager is. Now, when Dave Dombrowski got here, he changed the culture. He had funds. He was able to produce a winner. But prior to Dave Dombrowski getting fired, a lot of moves that he made to keep this team a winner have been scrutinized heavily. And I want to list off 4 of them, and I want to get your sense about which couple moves or which players maybe had they kept in their efforts, maybe the Tigers right now would not be in a complete demolition. The Tigers traded second baseman Devin Travis to the Blue Jays for Anthony Gose to shore up a weak defense. They traded Eugenio Suarez and pitcher Jonathan Crawford to the Reds for Alfredo Simon. They traded Robbie Ray, the key acquisition in the Doug Fister deal, a year prior to the Diamondbacks in a 3-team deal to acquire Shane Green from the Yankees. They traded Rick Porcello to the Red Sox for Yoenis Cespedes. So when you look at some of these moves, some of these guys now, in the long term, have produced high WAR. Okay, they're guys that are productive. Robbie Ray, Suarez now is a guy with a bat that's been consistent, and you gave up some prospects. And so I understand at the time, back in 2014, 15, they weren't looking long term. They weren't looking as an organization to close the window. But that's the big mistake with the organization. When you write the chapter about what happened prior to the demolition, the issue was, and Adam and I ranted and raved at the time they hired Brad Ausmus, you're like, this is a win now mode. You got to go for it in these next couple years. You don't hire Brad Ausmus. Fine. You had that first season with Brad Ausmus, and you kind of saw what he brought to the table and where this team was. At that point in time, average podcasters should not be able to kind of say, the window's closed, you got to start rebuilding. The story of the Detroit Tigers and why this is where it's at now is because they went for it, they failed, and they failed to recognize the proper time to rebuild. That's the story. And then so what they do is they start trading prospects for players. Dave Dombrowski starts trading people away and making bad moves to keep this thing going. And in the end, when you don't cash it in, this is what happens. When you push your chips in the middle, you trade prospects. The other way of looking at it is look, you should have just announced back then, look, we think that competitively we're not there anymore. We're going to mix in some prospects in the upcoming seasons. We're going to trade off pieces systematically to help rebuild this team. But some of the moves that were made, obviously keeping, look at the contract now for Victor Martinez. It's an albatross. It's atrocious. So the story for me is not recognizing when to close the deal and move forward, and not taking the realistic approach in terms of keeping this going, because it didn't have to go like this, Vito. We don't have to lose 100 games a year. You can lose 80 and get back to it, have a couple lean years, but then fight to get back. Now what they're doing is they're stripping this bare. I mean, now it's the free agency time, and we're talking about nobody being brought to the team.
You can't, Doc.
You can't what? Yeah, you can't bring anybody.
No, you can't talk about anybody coming to Motown because they're not going to try to sign anybody of the high-end caliber free agent out there.
Is the Eugenio Suarez move one that really bugs you, or letting go of Robbie Ray maybe a little bit early?
Well, you know what? Remember, Dave Dombrowski was slammed, was heavily scrutinized, to use an adjective and word, or a few words that you used earlier, for trading Doug Fister to the Washington Nationals. The key piece in that deal was Robbie Ray. Remember, Robbie Ray wasn't a high-end prospect at the time, so Dombrowski subsequently was slammed for that deal because he didn't get enough in return for Doug Fister. Fister didn't do that much with the Nationals. He had Ray, though, and then flipped him to the D-backs in a deal in which he got some guys that, didn't turn out to be great for the Detroit Tigers. So you got to slam him, I think rightfully so, to a certain extent for that Doug Fister deal, even though Fister, once again, wasn't enormously effective or successful while with the Washington Nationals. And the Eugenio Suarez deal, horrible. That went horribly wrong because Alfredo Simon, what did he do for the Tigers in his one season? He was horrible. They didn't want him in the rotation. He had a 5-something ERA, I believe, and they wanted him gone right when that season ended. So that was really bad. That might be the worst deal that Dombrowski ever made. And you can look back even further and look at the Edgar-Renteria trade. Remember when they gave Jair Jurgens to the Braves for Edgar-Renteria? Renteria didn't have a great campaign. Only 1 year, I believe, he spent with the Tigers. And then he got shipped off and went away. Well, Jair Jurgens was good for a little bit with the Braves. But remember, Jurgens then tailed off, was never the same after an injury or two. So you could really argue that that Suarez deal was the worst in the era of Dave Dombrowski. And now we're left, yes, we're bare, and now we have to get rid of a guy like Ian Kinsler. Maybe a year or two too late, at least a year too late, who, he still carries some value, but it's not as high as what it once was, too.
And I think many people, obviously, we saw Rick Porcello have a good year with the Red Sox, but, when we, got Yoenis Cespedes, he was productive, but we flipped him for Michael Fulmer.
So it worked out. That deal worked out. You have to give Dombrowski credit for that. And because Cespedes, by the way, Cespedes was really valuable too at the Tigers, and that's why they were able to flip him to the Mets for Michael Fulmer, the AL Rookie of the Year in 2016, a guy that is now the ace arm of the Tigers pitching staff moving forward. So you can't slam Dombrowski for that. But I think, yes, that Simon deal with the Reds, in which Eugenio Suarez had to be given up, man, that looks bad right now because Suarez is more valuable at shortstop at this point than Jose Iglesias, another guy that the Tigers might move on from here this offseason or early next year, or at least before that July 31 non-waiver trade deadline next season. So you could have had Suarez for the long term, a guy that you could have more easily built around than Jose Iglesias, a guy that really has no bat, even at this point in his major league career, which tells me that Iglesias will never be that productive of a major league hitter. So they could have had a more productive major league hitter in Suarez at shortstop, a guy that's also adequate, at least adequate, with the glove at short. And now I think it kind of comes to the point where we have to turn our attention to Ian Kinsler and Jose Iglesias being dealt, Doc, this offseason. Those might be the biggest questions for the Tigers this offseason. What to do with Ian Kinsler? What to do with Jose Iglesias? And they very well both could be traded, Doc, this offseason by Al Avila.
So, Vito, what do you think happens? Do you think Jose Iglesias, Ian Kinsler are on the roster when spring training hits?
Well, I say this, that if you want to increase their trade values a little bit, I think you might want to have them on the Major League roster to start off 2018 because their values, respectively, I think could increase based on how they perform to start off 2018. Let's say Kinsler starts off the season hitting better than he did in totality in 2017. Well, that only increases his trade value for the Tigers, as last year was a down year for Ian Kinsler because 3 of the 4 seasons in which he has spent time with the Tigers, not counting last year, were productive for Ian, in which he nearly amassed 6 WAR a season, and the lowest he amassed was his first year in Motown in 2014 at 5.7 wins above replacement, according to BaseballReference.com. So his value, according to WAR and according to BaseballReference.com's wins above replacement tracking, he went down all the way from 6.1 wins above replacement in 2016 to only 2.1 last season, or this past season, Doc, which is a scary sign of him tailing off as he gets older and older. 35 last year, and now, that means, think about it. He is nearing the tail end of his big league career. And when that's the case, when you're going to be 36 by mid-June next year, that means your trade value is going to continue to decrease. Not a good thing for the Tigers when they're looking to move a guy like Ian Kinsler for assets for the future. And the assets they could attain now for Ian Kinsler aren't nearly as high caliber as they could have been if they would have dealt him even after last year, when maybe they should have looked to deal him and were reportedly looking to deal guys like Ian Kinsler and only dealt Cameron Maybin for a relief pitcher, really a guy that will amount to that at the major league level, and Victor Alcantara, a guy that won't be anything of significance at the major league level anytime sooner, probably in the long-term future either for the Tigers or another major league club. So now, a guy that you would like to trade, like I said, Ian Kinsler doesn't have nearly as much trade value. And you could say this much, that the Tigers probably wasted their chance in getting a lot for Ian Kinsler last offseason, Doc.
Yeah, I think a scenario where when we see who Ian Kinsler potentially ends up with, we might probably have the same reaction that we did when JD Martinez was let go of. Because of the situation that timing is everything. You had a situation where JD Martinez, many people knew he was going to be a free agent. He was a rental. He was an outfielder. Many people felt like, you can get bats. And he did have a weakness in the outfield in terms of being a quality defender. So there were people that said that, Avila maybe got what he could out of this deal. But I think when we fully evaluate the JD deal, I feel like that the Justin Verlander deal will be looked upon a little bit better. And obviously the moves to trade Avila, his son, and Justin Wilson might end up being more in favor. So we probably will get 2 trades that might end up in the Tigers' favor, but the JD move might not end up bringing us players that might be productive. So that's the big test for Al Avila, is going to be probably not in 2018. I think he gets a free pass. It's year 1 of a rebuild. But we got to see what Candelario brings to the table. We got to see what these pitchers that they got bring to the table. We got to see who these prize pieces are that they got back for letting go. If they don't produce, and we go on and see Justin Wilson have a quality career, JD continues to hit 30 home runs, you start seeing these guys that we let go of start having victories. Right now, the Tigers are a little bit in the hole in the PR department because you let go of Justin Verlander and boom, he wins a ring. So that stings a little bit for Tigers fans, but the sting will be a little bit less if the players that we traded for can actually hit the ball. And Candelario showed glimpses. Wasn't like lighting the world on fire, but he at least showed glimpses of being a better third baseman than Nick Castellanos. So, hell, I know you could say, well, we don't want to rate Candelario based upon how shitty Castellanos was at third base, but hey, if we have an opportunity to upgrade a position, you can't have a perfect ball player. You can't have a great defender, a great bat, great teammate, great person. Sometimes you gotta, sometimes you have to be willing to take some people's flaws as well. And if Candelario can shore up third base, shit, it's better than watching Castellanos bumble and stumble all over third base, right?
Well, I think this, too. The Tigers already won that deal with the Cubs, potentially, getting Jeimer Candelario, a guy that was a very adequate and really above-average hitter for much of his time with the Tigers this past season, Doc. And also because of the fact that Justin Wilson, they didn't even want him on their playoff roster on the north side of Chicago. And Alex Avila is a backup catcher, realistically moving forward. So you got a third baseman of the future for that package. That could be the best deal that Al Avila has pulled off, I think is, at this point, and could be the rest of the way in Al Avila's GM tenure with the Tigers.
All right, let's take our first time out. We'll come back. We have to discuss what can we realistically expect from Miguel Cabrera. Already talked about what he's doing in the offseason, how he's going to strengthen himself. So we got to take a realistic look at Miguel Cabrera to finish off this podcast. Stay with us.
And Doc, the Detroit Sports Commission is one of our fine sponsors and has been now for a while. And guess what? Since 2001, the Detroit Sports Commission has applied its expert touch to marketing and to selling the Metro Detroit area as a marquee destination for regional, national, and international amateur sporting events. And through the Detroit Sports Commission's help, these events have attracted thousands of visitors and pumped millions of dollars into our local economy. It is why Detroit is now not only the place where champions are made, but also the place where championships are played. To find out more about the Detroit Sports Commission and all of the events they are bringing to our very region, Doc, follow the DSC on Twitter and on Instagram at DET Sports, and make sure to check out their fine website at DetroitSports.org. And back here on Tigers Talk with Chirco and company, Doc, what did you want to talk about here?
Okay, Miguel Cabrera obviously is going to be the centerpiece, the draw of this rebuild. I mean, is he going to be around when the Tigers potentially get back to the World Series and are contenders? Probably not. I mean, he's going to be damn near 38, 39, 40 years old if the Tigers are going to get back to prominence. But he's the guy you're going to pay to see. He's the guy that's making $30 million. He's the face of the franchise. And when you evaluate his 2017 season, you got to say to yourself, man, we need a lot more from Miguel Cabrera. I mean, he's got to stay on the field, he's got to be productive, and he's got to put whatever issues he had off the field, he's got to put them aside, and he's got to get back to being Miguel Cabrera, because when the man mashes, he can actually carry a ball club. Remember, when Miguel Cabrera was mashing the hell out of the baseball, he was talked about in the class of great Major League Baseball hitters, not only of this era, but of all time. And this is an individual that has pure baseball talent. The last couple seasons, whether it's age, injury, off-the-field stuff, his production on the field has hurt the Detroit Tigers, and we need to get him back. And so there's been reports and talks about, him getting stronger, working through, trying to get prepared for the 2018 season, and he's got to try to do his absolute best to be productive. But when you look at older players, obviously we look at Pujols, we look at older veterans, you look at the struggles of A-Rod when he was making big money. I mean, dude was making $25 million, 38, 39, 40 years old, even in the time when he was suspended for steroids, making big money. So I know we have hopes, but for you as a fan, do you think Miguel Cabrera comes back? Do we see the Miguel of old, or do we see a steady decline in one of baseball's greatest heroes?
Well, you know what? There have been many snide remarks already made about Miguel Cabrera being unable to get off the schneid. Right? You could say that about Miguel Cabrera already. Had a heavy decline that he experienced this past season for numerous reasons on and off the baseball diamond. The thing is, I don't think you can trust him to fully recover at this point in his career, Doc. I think he's too old. He's dealt with too much emotionally and physically with nagging injuries to say that for sure he comes back and is the same Miguel Cabrera from the time the Tigers got him in 2008 until 2016 when he was highly successful in a Tigers uni hitting in the middle of their order.
Chris McCoskey, Detroit Tigers beat writer for the Detroit News, wrote an article kind of discussing two players that started to have health declines early in their careers, but also got a chance to rehabilitate and extend their careers. He discussed in the Detroit News slugger Vladimir Guerrero and Pudge Rodriguez in terms of having ailments, but they were able to also extend their careers and do some things. So that's a reference point that he's using to say that, look, I know that there's doubts and whispers that Miguel is going to be on the decline for a long time, but there are examples of players that have kind of come back and done some things. So I'm asking you, where do you stand? Do you believe that Miguel Cabrera is going to come back, or do we realistically start with the notion and the criticism and the skepticism that he's going to come back? Where should we start? Should we believe that he's going to be back, or should we say that, look, this is a talented individual? Do we give Miguel Cabrera benefit of the doubt or skepticism?
Well, he's got to perform this year or he's done. And I think he's already done as a Hall of Fame caliber slugger for the Tigers. And I think you can argue, and this is bad for Miguel Cabrera when he makes as much money as he does moving forward with the Tigers until 2023 when his contract runs out. You could say that Mikey Matuk and Nicholas Castellanos are more reliable and premier sluggers for the Tigers at this point in their respective major league careers than Miguel Cabrera. How sad is that for Miguel Cabrera?
Wow. Well, it's not sad. I mean, age catches up with everybody. I mean, age is undefeated, right?
It is still undefeated. You're right.
But that's why sometimes these contracts are really devastating, and that you got to reward your players, but at the same time, you know that in the back end, you're going to, eat some dollars. But it's Miguel Cabrera. You don't have faith that this man, a man that has huge slugging percentage, huge home runs, a lot of key hits, can maybe even just be a doubles guy, a guy that can put the ball in play. Maybe you don't get the same power numbers, but a guy that obviously has talent to hit the baseball. You don't think he can be productive and be at least get back to being a positive WAR player?
Every couple of weeks. But you know what? I'm going to say this too. Can he even get to second base enough to make it a double? When he hits the ball hard, he might do it, might hit it far in the gap somewhere. But the thing is, can he get to second base? Can he trot it out and get to second enough times to make those nice hard hits into doubles for himself? That's the sad thing about his current state as a ball player. He's fat, right? You have to say that about Miguel Cabrera. He's slow, very slow. So he can't get around the base paths. And there's just something that was missing this year. And because of a myriad of reasons. But how much do those reasons carry over into 2018? That's the scary part to consider when evaluating what you're going to get out of Miguel Cabrera in 2018 and beyond. And once again, his current contract with the Tigers, which is a horrible one at this point, does not run out until 2023. And when your ball club goes into a tailspin, as much as the Tigers did this past season, and is expected to the next 2 to 3 years, that becomes even more of an albatross of a contract and a ridiculous contract for the club that the player is employed by.
Okay, so who do you think the fans are really hoping that Miguel Cabrera turns out to be? A player that played 7 seasons after turning 34, hit 224 home runs with 700 RBIs, batted .292 with a .562 slugging percentage and a .945 OPS. Which player is the hallmark of players that maybe people thought of as being washed up, went to a new team, had 7 seasons after he turned 34 that were outstanding? Who are we hoping that Miguel Cabrera can emulate in his older years?
Wow, that's a good question. Well, you brought up Vladimir Guerrero.
Not him.
So it's not him. I don't know. Tell me.
David Ortiz.
I'm going to say maybe Big Papi, okay, because he kept playing at a high level. And the thing is, what contributed to all of that? Even with Pudge Rodriguez, you brought up how Pudge was good maybe later into his career than people, better later into his career than people thought. Well, what did he have contributing to some of his on-field success, too? Remember, might have been some usage of roids. So, not to dirty these guys' names, but still, you have to kind of consider that.
Well, right now, Miguel is doing a lot more core training in order to maintain his body. He's already working out. He's doing some things. Avila said that he's okay with where Miguel Cabrera is right now. Cabrera is going to be 35 next season, owed at least $184 million through age 40. He posted career lows last season in batting average, slugging, home runs, and RBIs. When you look at his numbers, not good.
And see, the thing is, too, with Big Papi in Beantown, he had the luxury of being the everyday designated hitter. Miguel Cabrera still has to play first base at this point until Vmart at least retires. Now, if Vmart does prematurely retire, meaning before his contract runs out with the Detroit Tigers, well, then he can slide into that DH role even earlier. But still, there is the point to consider that who plays at first base then? You know, if Miguel Cabrera becomes the everyday designated hitter already in 2018, who is the first baseman? But I guess you don't care too much about that, Doc, when you know you're not going to win many games anyways.
So you're not giving Miguel benefit of the doubt. You're skeptical. You don't think that he can come back to be the quality of a David Ortiz, huh? Maybe not even in the middle. Maybe he gets to be like a 20 home run hitter, plays at least 140 games. Maybe you got to find avenues of resting him a little bit more during the season to keep him fresh. But it would be nice if Miguel Cabrera could perform at the level of a David Ortiz. No doubt about it.
Well, yeah. But the thing is, he had a lot of good bats around him, too. The Tigers don't have that luxury right now with their current ball club. Remember that. Won't be protected very well. I mean, Nicholas Castellanos is your protection now, realistically speaking. How good is he going to be at doing that for Miguel Cabrera?
So you're skeptical, huh? So we got a guy that we're paying a boatload of money to that you think is going to underproduce. Vito, based upon what you're saying, massive ramifications, because let's say he is unproductive. Do you see a scenario in which Miguel Cabrera is a scapegoat in 2019?
Well, he already was last year, so why wouldn't the Tigers fans continue to detract from him and start blaming him for the Tigers' collective failures? Because they started doing that. They started booing him. The Boo Birds came out, and prematurely, in my opinion, I know we talked about that on an earlier edition of Tigers Talk, that I thought it was unfair. Unfair treatment to Miguel Cabrera, all the stuff that he's done in a Tigers uni, and you started booing him last year. One down year, one bad season could be an aberration. It's just many baseball pundits, Tigers fans alike, don't believe that it was an aberration. I don't believe it was an aberration. So I think a lot of skepticism, you brought up that term to describe people and how they consider Miguel Cabrera, whether or not he can bounce back from last year, a porous season at the plate. Well, there is a lot of skepticism. And it's because I think a lot of people believe he will be unable to replicate production from pre-2017. And I think he becomes, yes, the whipping boy more and more from Tigers fans at Comerica Park and from those that don't show up because guess what's going to happen at Comerica in the near future? Nobody's going to be showing up and putting their asses in those seats at Comerica Park.
Savior or scapegoat? I'm leaning toward Miguel Cabrera being the savior. I think that a guy with that much talent can bring it out, and I disagree with you a little bit, but I am open to the suggestion that he could be the scapegoat of this team. But I do believe in his talent. I've seen it with my eyes. I think this is an individual that has to, put it all together. I mean, once his off-the-field stuff gets wrapped up, once his health gets in order, maybe at least in 2018, we can see a bounce-back year with maybe 25 home runs and around 90 to 100 RBIs. I don't see career lows going forward, so I'm hoping that I'm correct as the voice of reason on the Detroit Sports Podcast Network, and I'm hoping that Mr. Hot Take Artist over there, you calling Miguel Cabrera a scapegoat, will be wrong.
Well, he could be a savior if he replicates that production from pre-2017. I know I am the skeptic here regarding Miguel Cabrera and what he does in 2018 and beyond. Really quick, according to BaseballReference.com, they're projecting Miguel Cabrera to hit 22 home runs and to drive in 72 runs in 2018. Over or under? Let's play a popular game worldwide, a big Vito's over-under now, Doc, regarding Miguel Cabrera and his home runs and RBIs in 2018. Over or under first, his home run total being projected by BaseballReference.com, which is 22.
Under on the home runs, over on the RBIs. I think he becomes more of a contact power hitter, doubles, singles, does a lot more of his hitting in the ballpark and brings in a lot of runs because the man, obviously, big game moments, big situations can deliver. I see more RBIs, maybe a little bit less power, maybe in the neighborhood of like 19 home runs, 87 RBIs.
Most importantly, OPS now. BaseballReference.com is projecting from Miguel Cabrera an OPS of 849 in 2018. Over or under that mark?
Over.
Okay, I'm going to take the under because I think below 850 for his OPS as well. I could see 825, though, in that 815 to 825 range. And if he does that, he's not the Miguel Cabrera of old, though, still, Doc. He is not. And I think as Tigers fans have to simply accept the fact that the Miguel Cabrera of pre-2017 is not going to be existent at Comerica Park in the near or long-term future.
Great podcast, Vito. Good debate. Interesting stuff. We'll continue to evaluate other players on the roster, a la Nick Castellanos, Jacoby Jones, as the weeks progress. I like the fact that we can still fire up the microphones and have some decent baseball conversation. So I know that you came unprepared, but with that, I was very impressed with what you brought to the table.
I don't need to be prepared, obviously. No. But, you need preparation. But the Tigers need a lot of that to happen during the offseason. Preparation for 2018 and beyond. And that's what they're preparing for at this point, Doc.
So for those listening, where are we at in the baseball season? Winter meetings, as they call it?
Winter meetings in December. General manager meetings right now being conducted. Supposedly, now I want to read this tweet really quick from Anthony Fennick of the Detroit Free Press, I guess in the past. Anthony Fennick, we know him, right? We do. He's been on the show. He's got to be on again in the near future, I hope. He said that Avila's phone has rang several times this offseason in regards to several different players. He said at the Major League Baseball GM meetings yesterday, as in Monday of this week, Doc. So I think the phone is ringing off the hook for Ian Kinsler, Jose Iglesias. Is it ringing for Miguel Cabrera? What do you think?
Ooh, Miguel Cabrera. Is he on the roster in 2018? No doubt about it. $30 million is a big price to pay for what people are thinking. I think that the biggest plus for the Tigers would be if he does rebound, then by next year's trade deadline, a team that's in the hunt, in the mix for continued postseason success, can maybe make a nice offer for the Tigers. The best option is for Miguel Cabrera to not finish his career with the Tigers. The best option is he plays really well, gets off to a hot start, maybe 15 home runs in the first couple months, really shows signs that this is a guy that can be that final piece, and then you trade him off for 2-3 more players. I do think that if you ask the question realistically, is Miguel Cabrera going to finish his career? I would say now over 50% that he does not finish with the Tigers.
Really quick note here. Tiger Fest is Saturday, January 27th, according to the Tigers. Will we be in attendance? Probably not again.
Snow on the ground. It's usually freezing cold. Forget that, man. I'm not going to see the caravan of the Tigers. I may go if they go out to Buffalo Wild Wings. If they take that caravan, maybe they'll swing by Sterling Heights. You know what I'll do? Maybe I'll put up a sign. If I know what we can do, if we want to actually kind of be silly, we can kind of get the bus route of the caravan and we can put for hire on my sign, and you can put third baseman that can hit 220. You can put an application in. You want to do that? You want to apply to be on the Tigers?
I would like to do that. I need a tryout. My brother would love a tryout, by the way. A plug for him. He would love a tryout. How about Dominic trying out?
Oh, my gosh. We should do a hype video for you trying out for what position you want to play?
Second base.
You want to be the next second baseman?
Well, I played it all my life, man. I'm capable.
Okay, I think we're going to do that. In between.
Because when Ian Kinsler gets dealt, I'll be the next second baseman, and then I'll be on the Tigers caravan, and nobody will be coming to see me. I know that.
We got it. All right, sir. Great stuff. Look forward to chatting with you later on this week on the Two Bad Hombres podcast. Thank you for your baseball knowledge. It does, keep me excited talking baseball with you. I'll let you know you're probably one of the only, one of two people I talk baseball with. So thank you for the talk. It was really fun.
Thank you. I'm going to go cry now when I get home. And that's all. Adios.